Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Welcome to another episode of Health is Wealth. I am your host, Shabnam Riaz. Hoping you're having a great start to the weekend, a wonderful Saturday evening. And today we bring to you a very important program and on a very important topic. And World Haemophilia Day on the 17th of April. And in light of that, today's program, of course, is on haemophilia. What is it? Who does it affect? What are the symptoms? What is the cure? How is it managed? What do we have specifically here in Pakistan? We'll have all those answers for you right after I introduce our guests. I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Tahira Zafar, who's a hematologist and also director of the Haemophilia Treatment Centre. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure. And we also have Dr. Munawar Sher Khan, who is the president of the Haemophilia Patients Welfare Society in Rawalpindi. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, and with that, we're going to come back to our guests. But right now, let's show you a report about haemophilia.
Clot formation involves, among others, platelets and coagulation factors. The platelets are first to arrive at the scene and begin to loosely cover the injury. Thrombin enhances the activation and aggregation of platelets. On their surfaces, the coagulation factors, also activated by thrombin, accumulate. In tandem with 5A, factor 10A induces the so-called thrombin burst. Finally, thrombin converts fibrinogen into fibrin that then forms fibers, cross-linked through the action of factor 13. This stabilizes the developing clot. In patients suffering from hemophilia, the propagation phase of clotting is disrupted. As a result, they cannot generate thrombin in sufficient amounts to induce normal clotting. The molecule is a B-domain deleted recombinant factor 8. Its special feature? A purposely chosen polyethylene glycol polymer. This polyethylene glycol polymer, or PEG for short, is intended to prolong the circulatory half-life of the recombinant factor 8. In this way,
Okay, hoping that you found that very helpful. That was, a report dealing with haemophilia and what exactly is going on inside the body. Now, if I can come to our two experts who are with us here in the studio, I'd like to ask you, how much of a disease burden do we have in Pakistan?
Statistically, Shabnam, we have 22 to 24,000 patients, depending on the population of Pakistan.
Okay.
It doesn't sound much, 22,000 patients, but don't forget that's 22,000 families, and 22,000 families are suffering. Why? Because hemophilia is such a considered a rare disease. There are not enough patients, but the treatment is so expensive that these people die unheard of. We only know of around 4,000 patients who are known, out of which 2,000 or a little more are receiving proper treatment. I mean, some are going to hospitals, some are going to quacks, some are just staying in their villages, bleeding, and they think they've just got a swollen knee, or they've just had a head injury and the person bled to death. But actually, they're suffering from a treatable inherited disorder.
Okay.
It's treatable.
Right.
And in this day and age, to have roughly 16 to 18,000 people not receiving treatment, suffering because of lack of knowledge and awareness, is criminal on our part.
Absolutely.
And that's where our society comes in.
Right.
The Haemophilia Patients Welfare Society is trying its best to reach out to these 16,000. And thank you for having us on your program, where I hope a lot of people are tuned in and will recognize what hemophilia is.
Exactly.
It's a fascinating, well, from a doctor's point of view, it's a fascinating inherited disorder that you deal with, because you need to know families, pockets of hemophilia, where they are.
Right.
Why are they there? Don't confuse hemophilia with thalassemia. It's a completely different inherited
That's a
bleeding.
very important point there.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, because I think it is so important, but most of the people will actually confuse thalassemia with hemophilia.
Please tell us the difference.
Hemophilia is an inherited coagulation disorder where there's a problem with coagulation, and as a result of that, there's prolonged bleeding.
Okay.
While on the other hand, thalassemia is an inherited blood disorder in which there's either reduced or absent formation of hemoglobin, and those children actually require blood transfusion for the rest of their lives. So it's
Okay.
completely different, although both of them are inherited blood disorders.
Okay, right. So, as you said, you know that this is also a genetic inherited. So, who's at risk here? Does it skip generations? How is there any way of predicting who is going to get this?
There's no prediction as such, because as you see for inherited or genetic disorders, there's problem in the genes. How this mutation occurs, we don't know.
Okay.
But it happens in a particular person. In cases of hemophilia in a female, so she has this mutation or change in her gene on her X chromosomes.
Okay.
And females have 2 X chromosomes. When she's going to bear children, she'll pass her 1 X to a male child and 1 to a female child. The male child will only have 1 single X chromosome, and if that X chromosome is the one which is abnormal, that means that which hasn't got this signal to produce factor 8, for example, or factor 9, then that son will have hemophilia.
Okay.
On the other hand, if the daughter inherits that, she'll have a normal X from the father, and then she'll be a carrier, because that X, the normal X, will actually
got from her
compensate
mother. Okay.
for the absence on the other chromosome.
Right. Okay. So, you know, as you said, so what are the sort of, how is it diagnosed? Is it a simple blood test? What happens
Yes.
there?
For in Pakistan, I say in a way circumcision helps us a lot with diagnosing these children early. Most of our children are diagnosed when they're very young, like because of the practice of circumcision, which is
Okay.
usually done within the first month.
Yeah.
So in this case, a lot of our patients who are even far off areas, they come with the history of an older sibling who died or had problems at circumcision. So in case of the next child, they bring it to the bigger centers in the city and then get the test done. So the most of the patients are diagnosed, a lot of patients I would say diagnosed that way.
Okay.
Other patients, when they have similar symptoms, symptoms which would be bruising, on bruises on the body, nose bleed, dental bleed, bleeding from any other side, and if it will continue in a patient, then the parents get alarmed about it, bring it to a hospital or a doctor, and then they get some coagulation tests done, and on that basis, it's diagnosed.
It's a
that
very
they have.
painful disease, extremely painful, because there's spontaneous bleeding. You don't
Right.
even know. Child is sleeping comfortably, will wake up screaming, because spontaneous bleeding occurs in a joint. For no, I mean, he has
That's internal bleeding that we're
exactly,
talking about.
internal
Okay.
and automatic.
Okay.
For no reason, they haven't had an accident, they haven't sprained it. I mean, of course, if they have an accident or sprain themselves, then it's a complication. But this is something that happens spontaneously. And you can imagine what happens to the mother when you have a child screaming with pain and they don't know what to do. There's no sign. And so they wait 2 days, painkillers, whatnot, and gradually that area will swell and swell and swell. And you go to a ordinary doctor and say, oh, it's an infection, it's nothing, I'll cut it.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
And
That
what
is a
Dr.
disastrous situation.
And what Dr. Munawar is saying reminds me of the story. It's this story of pain and suffering, which I came across when I came back to Pakistan after completing my studies in UK. I came across a patient with hemophilia, Mr. Saiful Islam, and he told me he was at that stage in the Navy, an officer in the Navy, and he told me his story of the suffering he has had, because at that time nobody knew, when he was young, nobody knew about what hemophilia was. So he
Okay.
would have this joint bleed and
Right.
scream, and a mother would take her to him to the hospital, and then with those swollen joints he would be sort of, mother would carry him also to school and everything. And when he told me this, I decided that stage to look after these patients. And from there, we started this Hemophilia Patient Welfare Society, and which now we have over 1,000 patients registered with us.
Fantastic, fantastic.
The society was established in, it was a brainchild of Dr. Thyras, and it was established in 1999 with help from philanthropists and people like her. But we got registered with the Social Welfare Department in 2003 as a not-for-profit organization.
Okay.
And since then, as Dr. Thyras has said, we started with a few patients, but now we've got over 1,000 registered patients, out of which around 700 of them come to us regularly.
Okay.
The other 300, more or less, have sort of disappeared. Some have passed away, some have gone to other towns, but 700 patients are there. And the treatment is so expensive that we have to look to other welfare organizations or the World Federation of Hemophilia, which helps us in kind, and people who know about hemophilia or we approach, they help us with money. Because in the market, one little factor, which you might need 3 or 4 of them, Dr. Thyra can tell, but the minimum dose is 250 that you can get, and for hemophilia 8, and that is 9,000 rupees. Now 9,000 rupees, if the person is a little heavy, means they get 3 or 4 vials in a day.
Okay.
Up to 50,000 rupees with only for hemophilia A. There's hemophilia B, there's von Willebrand disease, there's other missing factors, and the treatment is not available in Pakistan.
Okay.
All we can do when they say, "Gee, we go to the government hospitals," government hospitals help as much as they can, but they don't have the factors.
They don't have the resources
They
there.
give plasma. You know,
Right.
the red blood cells go to thalassemia, the plasma comes to hemophilia. But to get a concentrated amount of factor in it, you have to give far too much liquid. You can't give that to a small child.
Okay.
So we need factors, and this Baitul Mal sometimes helps us. But again, we would appeal to the government and to other philanthropists that ease the import of factors some way or the other, so that the proper treatment is given to these children. They don't get disabilities. They are so intelligent.
Yeah.
You know, Alamia takes away one thing, gives you another thing.
Exactly,
Majority of them are brilliant kids.
And the thing exactly here, you know, that I'm finding that while we're having this conversation, is that the awareness is so important.
Yeah.
Because if you're not aware of this problem, then how is anyone going to, you know, be really geared to doing something for it?
The thing is awareness. Awareness is very important because that is the first step towards going on to getting treatment also. But there's no point in making people aware of something and then that facility is not there. So taking on from what Dr. Munawwar is saying, fresh frozen plasma is available in hospital, but that is not the right treatment for this because it has a very little amount of these factors in it, and you have to give enormous amounts, and sometimes with little children you can overload their system as well. So what we really require is factor concentrate for hemophilia, and for other coagulation disorder we also need to have concentrate. Recently, I tell you, a small child of ours who was born with factor 10 deficiency, she started having fits because of bleeding in her brain. We didn't have factor 10 concentrates for her here, and she then had to move to UK. Now she's being treated there with factor 10 concentrate. So look at the problems the family has faced because of one child and unavailability of the factors. So I think it's very important for us to create this awareness among the government officials that this is a serious disease. It can cause death of the patients, either death or can cause disabilities, major disabilities, like if the joint bleeds are not treated, the patients get problems with the joint, they can't walk properly, and then they are in a way a burden not only the family but the society as well, or the country as well. And if we would have treatments available, we would actually be very happily treating them here and bringing them up as normal individual in the community who would be productive in so many ways.
So is this less expensive abroad, or what?
No, it's not the question of expense. It is
It's
rather
availability.
more expensive its availability.
Availability.
Because a number of these companies which are producing these factors in the Western world or in the developed world, they bring it out in the developing countries on a lower, at a lower price. So
Okay.
the price is lower. The only thing is availability and then import of these factor concentrates, which that is where the government will be playing a major part.
So, you know, as you started at the beginning of the program, and you said that, you know, many of the patients are identified, the male patients after
Yes.
circumcision.
Yes.
So would it then be pertinent to suggest that for every baby that was going to undergo circumcision, that the parents should get this test done first?
Normally what happens is that before circumcision, the normal protocol is that the child should be checked.
Okay.
The problem with hemophilia, like Dr. Manawar has actually said, and the statistics is 1 child per 5 to 10,000 male births.
Okay.
So for 1 child, if we were to test that child for 1 diagnosis, we would be testing like 5 to 10,000 children.
Which is a
That's
burden.
That's a burden, not cost effective. What we would say then, that if there's a family history,
Okay.
so that is important,
Right.
to focus on in the families who have
Right.
this disease, that if there's a family history of bleeding disorder in a patient or in a child,
Right.
then he should definitely
Be checked.
be checked
Okay.
properly. What normally they do is they'll check OBT, CT and then go for a circumcision. That is not correct, because sometimes these disorders cannot be picked up by simple BTNs, which is bleeding time and clotting time.
Okay.
So they have to have proper coagulation tests done to diagnose this disease.
Right.
Completely off the subject,
Right.
but related to hemophilia, maybe just a matter of general interest. A revolution was caused because of hemophilia.
Okay.
Russia, Rasputin, Alexei, the prince, he was a hemophilic child. Tsar Nicholas's son, he was hemophilic. The mother ran from pillar to post to get treatment for that child and fell into the hands of Rasputin.
Rasputin, yes, yes.
And that led to the eventually
Yes.
led to the revolution.
Absolutely,
One
because
of the
he was the one
factors.
who was
One of the
treating
factors
you.
that
Exactly,
did it.
exactly.
Yeah.
If I'm
So
completely-
hemophilia is important, and
Right.
it's a royal disease. You have to be a king to be able to afford it.
Oh, that's
afford the
very
treatment.
sad.
Yes, that is one
yes.
reason of calling it a royal disease. The other reason is Queen Victoria was a carrier of hemophilia, and through her daughters, who were married to other royal families in Europe, the disease spread to a number of areas. So it's actually a royal disease. But like we always say, in Pakistan, it's a royal disease because the treatment is so expensive. You have to be a royal to be able to support the treatment.
Okay,
And we are sort of concentrating on a reach out program.
right.
You know,
okay.
like you were saying about awareness and reaching out. We have to find those missing 16 to 18,000. One way or the other, we have to get them treated.
Right.
But as Dr. Taira said, we have to get doctors, medical professionals, and of course the government, aware of the fact that there are these people, a minority maybe, but a very important section of society that requires help from everyone.
Absolutely. So is this a demographic? Do demographics come into play here? It's completely random?
It's globally, the statistics are the same anywhere in the world. So
Okay.
Rich, poor,
except for some of the coagulation factor disorders, which are technically you say which are autosomal recessive. That means that you have to have 2 abnormal copies of the gene to have the disease, like factor 10, factor 5, factor 13, etc. So that is more in areas where there's cousin marriages.
I was just about to ask you this question.
Yes. So those, we have Glanzmann's disease, we have von Willebrand disease, factor 5, factor 10, factor 13, factor 7 and so on, who are autosomal recessive disorders. And these are common in countries like ours, Iran, for example, where there are cousin marriages, because both the cousins are, when both the cousins are carrier, they have a 25% chance of a child having this particular disease.
And it's not restricted to males. We have one type of missing factors in women also, and this is coming more and more into the medical profession and into our medical books and into awareness that women are silent sufferers, and they don't realize that they have a factor missing, and they think it's a gynecological problem or something like that. They won't talk about it. You know, the mothers will say, "Koi baat nahi, it'll get all right. Don't worry about it." Families ignore it because it's gynae.
So taking up from what Dr. Munawar was saying, hemophilia, which is factor 8 or 9 deficiency, is a male disease. Where females are carriers. But these other disorders, which the autosomal recessive I've mentioned, they have no male predilection. It's equally common in males and females. But the female suffers more because of their, when they start having their periods, they bleed a lot more and have problems and need to be treated.
So in other words, you know, if we have any viewers who are watching this and they're having problems in their menstrual cycles, they should also get that ruled out as well.
Definitely.
Absolutely. The gynecologist should be aware, or the doctor they're going to. If they can't, I mean, if they, maybe after 6 months or a year of treatment, it hasn't settled, they should also look into the possibility of it being inherited bleeding disorder.
Right, okay. What's your message to people who are watching the program right now and who have been in a sort of a line of cousin marriages from parents to grandparents? What's your message?
That is what we always tell them in cases of these disorders which I've mentioned, Wald-Miliband disease, Glanzmann thrombocythemia, factor 5, factor 7, factor 13, factor 10 deficiency. In the family, they should not actually get married in the family.
At all.
At present, in Pakistan, we can't test them that there are carriers. But if they have the disease in the family, they should not actually get married in the family. There should be marriages outside the family.
Generally, it's better not to get married in the family.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Thalassemia, hemophilia, diabetes, heart. Generally, it's better if we don't get married in the family. Because why take the risk? Especially in diseases like hemophilia and thalassemia, you are the parents will suffer. Financially they'll suffer, emotionally they'll suffer. But that poor child is going to suffer with pain, bleak future. As they become adolescents, they don't know what their future is going to be like. Some of them are worried that they'll not survive, you know, and it becomes a mental health problem. So it's much better that you don't get married in the family. Why put a child at risk?
This is if you have the disease in your family. Like if the thalassemia is in your family.
Or the haemophilia?
And the hemophilia is in your family, or the inherited bleeding disorders. So what I would say, if thalassemia is in the family or if the inherited bleeding disorder is in the family, they should not have cousin marriages.
And in fact, for thalassemia, the government has now brought a rule that you have to be, all of you have to have, be tested for thalassemia minor. Because it is in quite a number of people in our population. You don't have to be cousins to be able to have a thalassemic child. So that's also at
and
risk.
again, it's all, you know, the education, the awareness that you're giving, because there's so much information out there that everything tends to become confusing.
The important thing is that government is trying, but unless we do it ourselves and be prepared to take the responsibility, we won't actually lead, it will not lead us anywhere really, because like famous Urdu शायर has actually said, खुदा ने आज तक उस कौम की हालत नहीं बदली, न हो जिसको ख्याल खुद अपनी हालत के बदलने का.
God helps those who help
themselves.
themselves.
That's a universal thing, exactly. So, like, okay, carrying on along those lines, if we take a look at the media today in our country, and where so many people are vulnerable and they are impacted by what they're watching on television. And so we have a highly influenced viewer capacity. Keeping that in mind, the subject matter that we see on the media, do you think that that is something that is helping us or is actually having a negative effect?
I think the media is playing important role. It can play a much more important role because like we are here talking about hemophilia, there should be more programs on the sort of diseases which are common and which can improve the treatment and awareness and prevention, which can improve with media. So media does or has a very important role, because like you already said that we have a big audience, everybody wants to listen to these programs, and whatever messages we will give them, they'll actually take those up. And in the past, after seeing the program, we have actually had patients coming over to us that we saw your program, we have come over. So this does happen, and and you should also actually feel important from that point of view, that you are doing a service to the community.
It's a wonderful feeling, yes, absolutely.
But when you say media, then I have my reservations also, is that PTV, perfect. You know, you haven't asked us, we as a non-profit organization want to spend any money that we get, any funds, any donations on treatment.
Right.
How do we reach out if the media does not play a responsible role, like a corporate social responsibility to come and take, even if you run stickers, or you don't have to run a whole hour's program, just run a sticker every day or once a week or something, saying don't forget to go to your hemophilia treatment center. If you have bruising, if your child has bled during circumcision, if your child often gets bruises, please go to the nearest.
These are the warning signs.
These are the warning signs.
Tell them the warning signs. Tell them what they need to do about these warning signs.
Okay, so you know, one thing I think that makes a huge difference is that when we talk about the print media as well, fine, you know, nowadays you have technology and people are more into gadgets and everything, but you can never really, you know, underestimate the power of the print media as well. If we're giving out, if we're giving out printed material as well, especially amongst, you know, young people, where they can be aware as well of various health issues, and especially in rural areas, in their language, so that it's something that they can understand and communicate with. So I think that also is something that should be very, very
that's
helpful.
one of our targets, let's say, or one of our projects, which is
in your
to
outreach
reach out,
program.
the outreach program, is to have pamphlets written in different languages, have messages in local newspapers and local radios. But again, we need the funds to do it. You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, everything boils down to money.
Yes.
And if we, as I said, if we get money, we'd rather save a life.
Yeah.
But if somebody can say, okay, we'll print it for you for free, we'll say, okay, go ahead, print it for free, we'll distribute it.
Right.
But if we are getting money, I'm going to say, sorry, this child is going to get lame. He's going to be disabled for life.
Okay.
I'm not going
I
to
will put my funds
I will
there.
put the
I'll put my
funds there.
resource there.
We have
Okay.
actually had in the past translated. There was no material available in Urdu previously about the inherited bleeding disorders. We've actually printed information in Urdu. Those brochures and booklets are available with the Hemophilia Society. And in the past, when we had funds, we went around the whole country. We went to the whole provincial capital. We went to Lahore, we went to Quetta, we went to Peshawar, we went to Karachi, and talked to people there, distributed the materials in Urdu to be passed over to these people. So, like Dr. Munawar very rightly said, we need funds. And if we have them, we can actually do much more than what we are able to do at present.
So, you know, anybody even who's watching the program right now and they think of, you know, something that they can do to help, because there are so many ways and every little bit does help, as in the printed material, you know, just print something and put some information together in whatever language that is, you know, appropriate, and then they could send it.
We have centers, we have chapters. Like, we are from the Rawalpindi chapter, but there are similar chapters in Karachi, Lahore and Peshawar.
Okay.
So if we can have them in local languages,
Exactly.
everybody speaks Urdu now.
Yes.
You know, so it's simpler to have central printing
Yes.
and distribute them. Anything and everything helps us.
Every little bit does.
Every
It
little
does.
bit. We have
Every little bit.
from
You can't-
1 rupee, I mean, there's no minimum to the maximum. We have people who put little kids put their pocket money into a donation box, you know.
You can't put a price on the human life that,
no,
you know, you're saving.
We have
at
very
that time.
generous donors,
Exactly,
you know,
yes.
they
and I'm
give.
sure expatriates are also donating a lot, because especially the medical people who are abroad, they always want to do a lot for people back home.
Yeah.
So
we need to develop our outreach program, you know, make it really dynamic.
So if anyone wants to donate to you, how do they get in touch? Do you have an email that they can contact you on?
Yes, definitely. If you would like to run it as a sticker, I can just dictate it to you.
Right.
It's hpwsrwp@gmail.com.
Okay.
And of course, we are available on Facebook, and they just have to www.hemophilia.org Rawalpindi,
Right.
and
they'll be able to get in touch with you.
You'll be able to get
so,
in
you
touch
know,
with us.
honestly, we spend so much time and so much money on other things. This is really where it matters. Giving back to community,
Definitely.
because I honestly believe that this is something that if we all do, and Pakistan is such a philanthropic country anyway. We're listed as one of the, you know, top philanthropic countries. So, okay, now your outreach programs, what challenges do you have, and people who are coming to your centres, are they coming in sort of very late stages? What are the main things
They
that
come
you're...
in different stages.
Okay.
Some of them, if we've had a good outreach program, like now, for instance, or earlier on we had a radio program and something like that, as soon as they hear about us, they come. What we want, one of the challenges we are facing is mass messaging. You know,
Right.
to be able to access through these 3G, FG, what are they called? Your Zong and Uphone and
Okay.
all these people, if we can get them, to one of them, you know, it needs time. If you really ask me the challenge, it's resources. We can't afford to pay people. We are all volunteers.
Volunteers.
And
Right.
it's actually, I'm working 7 days round the clock. We need people. Resources are necessary. To get a good resource person, you need to have salaries. Projects don't give you salaries. They say that's your problem. Projects will give you, we are running a couple of projects which are really good ones. One is called Hafazat-e-Najm, where we ask people to adopt a child for just 2,500 rupees a month, but for education.
Okay.
Okay, so we say you have to make a commitment for at least 1 or 2 years. We'll find the suitable child for you. You adopt them.
Okay.
Now, but that is adopting a child for education.
Right.
But if you want to adopt a child for treatment, then you have to pay a little more because treatment is very expensive.
Right.
Now, that would be wonderful if we could get more people adopting children for treatment, because
Okay.
that is actually saving a
So
life.
I'm sure social media is helping out a lot as well. Are you getting through to a lot of people via social media?
We are trying very hard. It takes a lot of effort to get through to the right person. You know, how do you... we don't have... What we don't have is the public publicity manager.
Okay.
You know, that's what we
Right.
really need,
Yes.
is somebody who could go around.
Yeah.
And of course, once you get that, then people like Dr. Tyra and myself would go and talk and all. But should we be raising funds for the hemophilic patients? Or should we going around doing awareness? How much can you stretch 2 or 3 people?
True. Absolutely.
If there are only 5 or 6 of us who
Yeah.
are really committed, then what happens? I mean, there's a limit to our ability to micromanage.
I mean, if we tell you how much we are doing, I think there'll be nothing else left in the program. It's really our heart and soul, and it's eating, sleeping, walking, talking, everything.
So what got you started with this? There's always a
Like-
beginning of a story.
Like
you
what
see?
I was telling you, I met this patient and got into this.
Okay.
And then when one day I found Dr.
Many
Munawar.
years later, I've been with hemophilia for about 5 years now.
I'm with it since the sort of 1980s. Then I came back, and then Mr. Saiful Islam, who was himself a patient of hemophilia, and he was the first president as well, and he stayed on for a long time. And after that,
I'm a humanitarian at heart.
So
I worked with different organizations.
I just found her, and I think it's a stroke of luck really, because we were in a bank, and I just saw her and asked her what she's doing, and she said nothing much, and I said, why don't you come over? And she's never looked back since that day.
I never knew. I worked with the St. Joseph's Hospice, the Red Crescent, Babood, you know, different things. And Dr. Taira says, come, what are you doing these days? We met on a walk, actually. And she says, what are you doing? I said, nothing, I'm, want to take it easy, I've done enough. She says, come and see hemophilia. And I said, I don't know anything about hemophilia. What is there in hemophilia? You treat them. But once I got there, Shabnam, when I saw the suffering and the need and the knowledge that you can help someone in pain, in need, help Taira relax in management, so she can do the treatment. You know, I mean, her expertise should not be spent on fundraising or other things. If I don't have the expertise for fundraising, but administrative experiences there, so people can be spared because of my skill in administration, maybe, or talking to you.
Wonderful, it's a pleasure. When we look around us, we see that there's a lot, depression is on the rise. Mental health challenges and other things. You find a lot of young people as well are, they're having their problems, their anxiety, depression, whatever. The volunteer spirit is said to do a lot in lifting the spirits of the person who actually is volunteering too.
I tell you because in Western countries, you might be knowing that if somebody has a child with hemophilia, he or she would devote their whole life towards the uplift of patients with hemophilia. Somebody has I had a patient when I was working in one of the London hospitals who had aplastic anemia. The child died of aplastic anemia. What the parents did, they didn't sit down and keep on crying for the rest of the they made a unit for aplastic anemia care in that particular hospital. So this is the spirit, this is what I want, and we all want, that this spirit should be somehow or the other should be brought up in our public, in our patients, that they don't just have to sit down
and
there.
such spirits are contagious, by the way.
Well, if you take World Federation of Hemophilia, it started in Canada because there was just one person who had hemophilia, and he said, we must help everybody.
Fantastic.
His name was Frank Schnebel. He was born on 17th of April, and that's how World Hemophilia Day is. And every country in the world, because there are hemophilics all over, we observe this day. We light it up red, spread the word, etc., etc.
Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the program, so sorry about that. There was so much to talk about, and it's been a fascinating episode. Just before we leave, a very quick message from each of you.
I've just got two quick messages. The first one is for the patients with hemophilia and or the people who have got symptoms like this. A message of hope. I just want to tell them that there is treatment available. We are reaching out to them, and it is now up to them to move forward, to come to us so that we can help. The second is for the medical professionals. Please continue to treat this patient with commitment and passion, because the difference you will make in the life of patients with hemophilia today is going to make the world a much better place for them tomorrow.
Absolutely.
I think I'd like to leave it at trying to make a much better place for hemophilic patients.
Wonderful.
That is our mission, and I hope that the government will help us achieve our
We wish you the best of
vision.
luck and hope we can be of service whenever. And people who are watching the program as well, I'm sure they will reach out to you. Thank you so much for being
Thank you,
part of it.
Shabnam. Thank you very much.
Okay, and with that, we come to the end of the program. Hope you enjoyed the topic, a very, very important one, and with the messages from our guests. See you next week. Stay happy, stay healthy. Bye-bye.